Okay, so basically we've seen all these things, except with the icons and scroll bars and Windows listener. I mean, this Windows listener is the other type of listener. We've seen the key listeners, the action listeners, the mouse listener. Well, the Windows listener is just something that allows you to deal with the window and just, I don't know what. Let's have a look, and what kind of. You see, this implements a key listener when we would like to work with the keys, and it would like to implement something else. Windows listener, window listener. There it is. Now in the window listener, now I need to implement some other methods. So these are the methods coming from the key listener. If I'd like this to be implementing all the methods of Windows listener, let's just see what those methods are. So this means window opened, window closing, window closed, window iconified, de-iconified, activated, deactivated. So what I'm going to do, just so you can see those, I'm going to do system.out.println. Okay, so let's just copy this and paste it here so you can see them, the effect of each one of them. What it does and when it does it. Now I might explain this with some example, but maybe we can do that with the example, inshallah. I'm going to do that with the with this hidden number that we did. I'll just go back to it and then play with it. So now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to say window opened. So when window open is going to happen, I'm going to see that on the output. Window closing, window closed. Now notice that closing is in the way of closing. It did not close yet. So while it starts closing, you can do something. Close means that's it, it's closed. Now window opened is basically when the window is showing up. Iconified is when I'm doing this. This is iconified. So when I put this, you'd like something to happen, you're going to see that iconified. De-iconified is when I bring it back from the taskbar to a bigger window. Activated is because maybe it's a window here, but I'm back here, so now it is not activated, it deactivated, but here now it is activated. That means it's going to show up, and deactivated, the opposite. So let's have a look and see if we can run these and see those messages down here. Now you see, if I put it down, not seeing anything. I'm not seeing anything because I forgot a very important part. Now this is just one part. The other thing that I need to do is in the constructor I need to associate. Now these are actions that are going to be done by whom? I want it to be done by this frame, so I just need to, the same thing, remember when we did this with this key listener. Even if we put these things, if we don't put in the, let me collapse those. If we don't do this add key listener with this, we did not associate this window listener with this frame. Now we need to do the same thing with the add window listener. And then now by adding the window listener, now these actions are going to be executed by this window, this frame. So this frame now, if I see, now it's activated and it was opened. Now if I go down, it's iconified and it's deactivated because it's not visible, it's deactivated. If I click on it, now it's de-iconified and then it's activated now. If I see another one, see now it's deactivated. It's not activated anymore. If I click on it, now it's activated. Again, deactivated because it's not showing up. So you can do things when it's not showing and when it's showing, so you can play with this type of events. And did we not see anything? Something else? Closing, yes. Now if I close, so I'm going to see this is closing and then that's it. But how can I see it's closed? But I need just to remove this set exit on close. If by default it's just going to hide, right? So now if I close it, it's deactivated, but it's not closed. Okay, did I not mention this closed? but it's still running. But anyways, I don't know how to get the close then. Close, maybe it's just, I was expecting if we just close it like that without this exit or close, it's just going to show up. But there's this closing and close. This one, yeah, it should be showed when it's closed, but I don't know exactly where. There's some kind of small detail about that I don't remember now. But anyways, you get the point. Now there's a lot of different kind of listeners that you can play with. Now this window listener, key listener, mouse listener, and then we've seen action listener, and well, there's some other things that I would like to show you that I forgot now. I just remembered, and which is kind of actually more interesting than doing what you did, except for this move donut. But let's say, for example, I'm just going to remember this hidden number. Can I find it? I did name it maybe this week for exercise 2 probably. Yes. Now this is what you remember this example when we did this. Now this is our game when you have to guess what number it is. So this is, let's say, between 37 and 25. Okay, you know, there's some kind of algorithm to try to find this hidden number without in the shortest number of tries. It's you always divide the space. Let's say, for example, I have between 0 and 100. I always, if you notice, I always start with, I need to know a number. Let's say this one. I don't know what the number is. I always start by cutting it in half. Now the number should be between 0 and 100. I put 50. I'd like to know which half I'm going to focus on. And then from that half, it tells me, okay, it's, like I said, 50 is too big. Okay, that means it's here. So now I cut it into half again. From 0 to 50, the middle is 25. So I cut it into half. I said 25. And then it tells me, okay, 25 is too small. And then I'm going to enter the middle. So I'm trying always to do the middle between 25 and 50. What's 25 divided by 2? It's 12.5. But there's no 0.5. So I'm going to say it's 12. Now 25 plus 12, that's 37. So I'm just splitting this in two, and this is 37, and it's giving me too big. I always cut this interval that I have, always cut it in half, so you can. This is the smallest number of tries that you can get it from. And I mean, unless you're some kind of lucky, and then from the one number you can find it, as it happened some time ago. So now, what is now my next number? If I cut this into half, between 25 and 37, it's 12. 12 divided by 2, 6. So 25 plus 6, 31. So I'm just going to try 31. And 31 is too small, that means 31 is still here. Now between 31, no, the number is between 31 and 37. So I have 6 numbers, that means 3. So add 3 to 31, the 34, I'm going to try 34. 34 is too big, so now it's between 31 and 34, and 3 divided by 2, that's 1.5, well, I'm going just to add 1, so let's say 32, for example. 32 is small, while probably 33, and that's how we found it. Now we designed this like this, right? If you remember, we had to design this is how we used to design things, by just going into this constructor and then setting up this and trying to imagine this in our mind, or maybe draw something and then put it and trying to see. Now there's a better way, there's an easier way, at least with Netbeans. Now I'm just going to show you that among the things that I have here, there's one class that I can have, which is a JFrame form, which is kind of convenient because as soon as I do this, this is new JFrame, I'll just keep it the same name, I don't care. I just would like to show you this thing. Now this is a graphical user interface designer. So instead of you putting this in code, Java is going to put the codes for you. What I mean with this now, it gives you this frame, which means it gives you also the possibility to preview the design by clicking on this button. It will show you how it will look like. It doesn't run, it just shows you how it looks like. Now you can go back to the source and see. Basically what happens is that all what we've been doing, it's done here. It's a new frame that extends the JFrame. Now it does do this before JFrame because it just gives a full name. If I don't use the full name, then I have to import. But this, you don't need to import if you do that. Now this is a constructor. This constructor calls a method called init component. What does init component means? Where is it? It's here. It sets the default close operation. It sets some kind of type of layout. It's using here a group layout, and that group layout is something it's a type of layout, and then it does something. So this is basically, it tells you this is auto-generated, so it's generated automatically. And it tells you this method is called from within the constructor to initialize the form. Warning, do not modify this code. The content of this method is always regenerated by the form editor. This is the form editor. Now here on the right side, you can have some panels if you'd like to add some. There are other things that you can add, but also you have the label, the text area, the buttons, and you can have couple of other things. Now let's say I'm going to add a button. I'm going to add a button here, and this kind of layout shows you that to change the layout. See, it tells you to change the layout manager of a container, use the layout submenu from its context menu. Now if I don't want to do this, I can right click here and I can just set the layout to be some other things. Is it a border layout, or is it absolute layout? There's a lot of different kind of layouts as we didn't see. The flow layout. So what do you like to do? So if it's a flow layout, this is what it's going to be. And then if you want it to be another layout, which is what they call the free design, it allows you to move it wherever you want. So you don't need to care now about this layout. You just put them wherever you want it to be, and then you don't need to pay too much attention to that. Now notice that this gives you this button, but can I change the text? Well, yes, check here. On this side, it shows you all what you can do, all the properties of the text. So the set text here, if you'd like to change the way it looks, you just go here and say this is my button. And it's even better because it allows you to set the color of the foreground. You just come here and then select the colors, and you can have different kind of color choosers, or some kind of palette. These are the name of the colors as you have seen, or whatever, red. So now it's going to be red. You can change also the font, so you don't have to do these things manually. But something happens every time I do something. It is put in the code. The first thing, notice that it added the button that it called JButton1, and this JButton1 was initialized, and this JButton1 will set the foreground color to be this, set the text to be this. So it prepares everything that I do in the graphical user interface. It is done programmatically for me by this form editor of NetBeans. So you can just focus on designing here, and then the NetBeans is going to put the code of it. So notice with this free designer, when you see this different layout, I can just, whatever I put it, these numbers are going to change to make this button one position change. Notice now it's this 65, 65, 65. This is type of gap, a container, this gap and container, whatever it is. This means like this. You see, this kind of spaces that you have, these are the type of gaps. Now if I move them, I move the size of the button, whatever, everything is going to be translated to some code, and it's done just for me. I don't have to do it manually.
And if I want to share this application when I'm done, I just copy this whole code and send it to them.
Yeah, that's the same idea. It's the code is what this is just a helper.
Yes, I send this all.
That helps you design. Whatever you're going to do is going to be a code. Sorry, let me close this. It's going to be a code that you can find in the source. So that's what it helps you design your application much easier. So if, for example, I put a label here, I'm going to change that label size to something like this, and maybe change the font to something much bigger. Okay, and in this label one, let's just keep it like this. And there's a lot of different things, anyways, that you can add. There's this progress bar. There's a lot of different controls. There's radio buttons. There's kind of password field or a text field. There's a text field where it's text. Here it is. So you can do whatever you want, and basically you can change the properties of all of this. Now, what about the actions? If I'd like to put an action. Now, for the easier ones, like for example, I click on the button, something should happen. If I double click on the button, now this is what happens. Check. It's doing things for me. Just tell me, okay, add your code that you want to do here. And I have a J label that they call it label 1. I can rename those, by the way. I can give them a different name if I want to. Set the text. I'm just going to say button clicked. So now I added some action that if I run, no, I want to run this file. You see, I get this button. Oh, different style though. It looks really different. Well, we're going to talk about that. But if I click on this button, it says button clicked. So, but whatever we did before, it's still happening. Now let's have a look at what happened. Now see this. This is my button, and it adds an action listener. This is a new action listener, and in the action performed, it just called this J button action performed with this event to be like this parameter here. Which means I'm calling a method J button action performed. Which one is this? Well, this is the one that was created for me. It's a private method that I just put the code in. So this, it just adds the thing that we used to do, except that it does it for us. And you don't need to care about them. So now, how can I rename these things? Well, I would like to rename the button, for example, to be something else. I just right click and then you say this change variable name. Instead of J button 1, I want it to be button btn my button. So now it's just a refactor that happens. Everything now is button btn my button. Same thing with the label. I don't want it to be called J label 1. I'm just going to call it my label. So I'm just lbl my label, and then it changes the variable name. And then if you go back to the source, now even my code here, it just label my label, just set the text. So anyways, it's just a helper. The base things is what you learned by doing it manually. But this is just helps you draw things or design things much easier, much faster. Yes?
The design section on the right side, the code, events, and binding.
Yes, that's what I'm going to talk about them. Let's say, for example, I was thinking about just if you double click on something, this is the action listener. So it's going to implement it for you. But there's also other things, like the other events. Now this is the action performed, you see on the button. Now the action performed is creating a new method for me. This is my button action performed. This is that when I click on it, this is the name of the method that is going to be executed, because this one is what had been in the action listener of that button. Now I can have other things though. You can see, for example, I have the key press. It shows me all the type of events that I can catch. The mouse events, the key pressed events, the other type of events. And this takes us to the question that says, can I just make the mouse? If I just move the mouse on something should happen. Well, yes, I can. For example, I can just click on this and say, for example, if the mouse enters here, so mouse entered, I would like something to happen. So when my mouse enter this button, I want something to happen. So what is going to happen? I'm going to click here and click select this my button, see btn my button, mouse entered. It's going to create a new actual mouse listener and create a new method that I'm going to put the code in. Now you see, it tells me, okay, put your code here. I can just remove this basically, and then what's my code? I'm just this jtext field 1. I'm still have a text field 1 dot set text. The mouse is on the button. So it's going to show this here. Every time the mouse is here, I'm just going to show it inside this text field. Now I want, if the mouse now still, the event now have two type of this button has two type of event. It has action performed event and a mouse entered event. When the mouse leaves that thing, I'm just going to make, say, the same thing, but this, the mouse left the button. So if I run this thing now again, it's just going to open this one. I'll run the file. So yeah, and you see now the mouse is on the button, the mouse left the button, and before I did not pay attention. You see now it shows that the mouse is not on the button, it shows nothing happens, and now once it's on, it's something. If I click and the button is clicked, if I'm moving out, so I can just play with this, all the events much easily, and each one of them is going to be some kind of an event that is going to be associated with it. So you see this button, this mouse button, it adds a new mouse listener that is going to allow us to have this mouse entered and mouse exited. Each one of them is going to be a method that is going to be called, and it does something. So it organizes things for me. Yes?
Can I use the G graphics in the design too? Or only inside the source code?
No, with the graphics now, if you like to paint, well, no, it won't help you like this. This is just when you design things that are already available. Now you can see there's a lot of different things here. You have a lot of controls, but see there's some kind of scroll pane when you would like to have some kind of scrolling that happens, and you can have a lot of different things. You have this menu bar if you'd like to add a menu bar, the menus, menu item. You have a lot of different things. The separator. You also some kind of windows that we did not talk much about, but you can just, there's some kind of windows that are already ready to use. Like this color chooser, I can just have a window that changes the color, that allows me to give me a color, and then the file chooser to choose a file. There's a lot of different things here that we did not have a look at, but you can, these are like the old AWT, this is the old components, like this is the swing ones, but these are like the old AWT ones. And yeah, sorry, I did not get your question. I want to say something though. Check that when you run this, it shows like this. Well, this is basically how it used to show. But when I run it, no, this one. When I run it, it shows me a different style. Now the button has a different style. Well, let me show you something. Let's have a look at the main. See, this is the main, and this is how the frame is run. And this is doing something kind of weird thing. It's a new runnable, and it's doing something. It creates a new object and then sets it visible to true. But inside the method called run, inside it seems like to be some kind of either an anonymous, it's an anonymous class of runnable. And what is runnable? Runnable is an interface. But this interface is called by this Java event queue invoke later. Well, this is done to create the form and generate it, but it's generated in a different, some kind of process. I don't want to get into too much of that, but it's, anyway, that's not what I wanted to look at. But look at this here. This here, there's some piece of code that is hidden, and if I click on it, it just tells you that it sets some kind of, there's some try catch, whatever for, and then there's some kind of nimbus. This is what sets the style to be this nimbus. There's some other ones, I don't remember the names though. The look and feel, I think I've seen that in the documentation somewhere, but I cannot recall now. Nimbus here is what gives you this, again, what gives you this kind of style of the buttons on the frame and the labels and things like that. Now if I get rid of this thing and I run again with Shift F6, but hold on, I just need to remove these. I'll remove completely all these things. Shift F6. Now it just shows the way it used to show. There's no styling in here. And I mean, there's some things that are available here that allows you to play with different fields. So the Nimbus look and feel is this one that we have seen, this kind of look here. Now in the frame, you see I always go back here, it goes into the top. Can I change this? Well, yes, I can. I just need now to click on this frame. You see now it's properties of the new JFrame. And this is like the file, but if I'd like to get the frame, so this is the default close operation. I can set it here. The title, if I'd like to title of the frame, so this is like a test form editor. Now if I just run it again, it's not showing because did I save? No. Shift F5, Shift F6. Now it says test form editor. This is the title. And the other things is that I can mention the background color, etc. But I'm just looking for the position. And where is the position?
Location.
I'm sorry?
Location.
Location, yeah, location. Location not set. And I can set, well, some kind of numbers. Let's say, if I put the numbers myself, like what we used to do. Now, if I run it again with Shift F6, it's going to be in that same location. So basically, you can edit anything. And there's a lot of different kind of properties that you can play with. And the events are the kind of events that you would like to catch, things to happen to them. And every time you change something, this becomes bold, so you can know which are the parts that you changed. You see, for example, I changed this, so the title is there. The default close operation it was changed for me, but it's changed. So, and this is the form editor. So you can play with that. If you'd like to design some applications, you could just use this. It's much easier to implement things with this and to design things with it. Of course, if you'd like to draw some custom panels and draw on them some kind of circles, this will not help you much. But if you're using some components already, you can just use those. Yeah.
I use this to make half of this is the move a dot, move a ball. So the buttons, I can use this and then on the...
Of course, yes, you can do that. Yes, you can. For example, but you need to create now, for example, a new J panel form. Class that extends a J panel. So this inner class that we created, my panel, I make it extend the J panel, and then I'm going to use it inside here. And then you can design your buttons as you mentioned there, and by this form editor. So that's the thing. So I don't want to spend too much time on that, because I would like to introduce you to some other things that are more kind of interesting, which will allow us also to understand this whole code here, this try catch thing, and this is what I'd like to talk about now. But let's just close this video if you don't have any questions, and we'll talk about the exception handling in the next one.